The U.S. Department of Labor recently hosted a meeting with business executives where they discussed cutting all the red tape. And when the companies talk to lawmakers about cutting all the red tape, it always ends up very badly for consumers and workers. Cutting all the red tape is just nothing but talk. It's the equivalent of, we don't want anybody looking over the shoulders of corporate America. We don't really care what corporate America does to consumers. You don't have to. You can cut all the red tape. It's just another way of saying we really think you're going to be honest enough, and you're going to be fair enough with consumers, but we don't have to worry about you. How outrageous is this story?
There's so many different issues with this, and let's go to the first one though. Let's talk about that talking point, the cut the red tape. I mean, this is the standard. Republicans say this. Any Republican, whether it's running for dog catcher or president of the United States, everything in between, tell us that regulations are killing jobs.
Yeah.
You don't have a job, or you don't have a good enough job, because these liberals have put these regulations in place that's preventing you from succeeding in life. All your problems are because of regulations. First and foremost, there's absolutely no reality in that. We have seen study after study showing that regulations, whether they're environmental or workplace regulations, increase productivity and contribute more money to the local economy. I think for every $1 you spend on regulations, $7 extra ripples through the economy.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
well, there's a reason for it. Okay, the reason is this. At first, you have the company that says, "Oh, wow, this is fantastic. You know, I can pollute this stream. I can steal this money from mom and pop investors on Wall Street. I can put this particular this pill on the market, this pharmaceutical that we have information that it will shut down liver, it'll shut down a kidney, but we can do that because the FDA is not looking at us." It goes on. Our automobile. How many times do we see recalls? And what we find after the recall is the regulator let it happen. The regulator let this bad thing happen, whether it's a gas tanks exploding. The regulator said, "Yeah, that's okay. We're going to let it happen." Monsanto right now with Roundup. The regulators are letting Monsanto be sold on the market, and it's killing people with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and all types of cancers. So your take is the long term is it's going to cost.
And there's a great example for that. Look, we're about, a week or two at this point away from the, what would this be, 8-year anniversary of the BP oil spill. Now, you want to talk about what a lack of regulations does and what it costs a company? Look at what BP did. And I know you know this better than anybody else. The regulators were almost literally in bed with BP and Deepwater Horizon and I forget the other name. But
Transatlantic.
They let them. The regulators said, "Hey, guys on this rig, why don't you fill out your own safety reports? Do it in pencil. We're going to come back and write it in pen. We're going to not, pop you on this. We're going to ignore this." Chris Owens was the regulator on this. And this is what happens. And now we have a government that is 100% Republican controlled. And they're inviting these business leaders to this little summit that they had a few months ago, saying, "What can we do for you?
Yeah.
What regulations do you want gone? How can we screw your workers?" And listen, here are the things they wanted to get rid of. The overtime rules, they want to get rid of that. Yeah. They talked about getting rid of a rule to ensure retirement savers don't receive conflicted advice, so they're screwing with your retirement. And they want to get rid of the rule to require businesses to electronically report workplace injuries and deaths.
Right. Okay, look, let's back up just a little bit. You threw a lot of stuff out. We were one of the four, there are 4 law firms in America that were assigned to handle the BP case. We were one of them. The point that you're making about what you were talking about there is what we call regulator capture. Okay, we have a revolving door. We've talked about this so many times. You have regulation capture. In the fossil fuel industry, we actually had the people who were supposed to be mining management, who were supposed to be regulating what was going on in the Gulf of Mexico. They were actually having cocaine parties where they would bring in prostitutes and they would have these. They was just basically a legalized orgy, in their minds. Well, we're going to have this huge orgy with these regulators. Well, the regulators, they saw the relationship. They had this party, where they bring in women, they bring in cocaine, money would be exchanging hands, and all of a sudden they found out, well, these regulators are kind of letting us do what we want to do. These are only a different kind of prostitutes. These are politicians. These prostitutes live in Washington, D.C. These prostitutes, they get paid another way. They get paid by way of campaign contributions, but they're prostitutes nonetheless. They'll sell their character, they'll sell their honesty, they will sell the consumer down the river for the right amount of money. Now, your point is that right now they're having this big meeting, and the big meeting is where they're telling corporate America, this is the checklist of things we're going to do. You give us some more things that you want us to do, and we're going to do it. Right? Isn't that what's happening?
And you had actual employees, regular civil servants at the Department of Labor, which I think we might have skipped that. The Department of Labor put on this meeting.
Right.
They invited them there, and the employees in the Department of Labor who helped plan this said, okay, well, we've got all these businesses that have RSVP'd. We need to go ahead and invite the labor unions. We need, worker protection agencies. And the Department of Labor said, we're not going to do that. We don't need their voices here.
Yeah, you don't need the voice of the worker.
Right.
You only need the voice of the corporation. You need the guy from Wall Street that is, he's making all the money on on what happens when you deregulate. But, here's how it ends. And I think this is where you were headed with this. The regulator may give them a pass. The regulator may say, you don't have to wear that hat when you're on the job site, or you don't have to wear these gloves or eye goggles. OSHA says you don't have to do it anymore. But what ends up happening is that doesn't stop the lawsuit for the person who still has brain damage because something's crushed his head, or he's lost his eyes because he didn't wear goggles. The lawsuit still takes place. And in the end, when you do the math on it, the corporation ends up losing a lot because of the accidents that take place. This is an economic issue. Labor protection is an economic issue as well as a safety issue, because they've done so many studies to follow the economics on it. And when people, as you pointed out, when they play nice, when they play by the rules, when they look out for the consumer, the corporation saves much, much more money. But the DC, the prostitutes, as I pointed out before, the DC prostitutes, this is a great opportunity for them to bring in a lot of campaign contributions, because across the table is going to be all these corporations. They're in the auto business, the pharmaceutical business, you name it, they're all going to be there for their handout.
Well, and as you've pointed out recently too, when you have these CEOs who only stay at a company for 3 to 5 years, if I'm the CEO and I make the decision, I'm doing away with safety goggles because OSHA is okay with it, but then 8 of my employees get blinded, well, I've already moved on.
Yeah.
So now the new CEO gets to deal with that. And so the way we fix this, the way we change the system is we have to have laws in place that say if you are the CEO of the company
at the time
and you make this decision, and if that decision comes to some kind of lawsuit 10 years from now, after you've long left the company, you should still be the one held liable. And that's what we need to go. Technically, you should be in prison.
Well,
but if we can't do that, you're the one who's going to pay for it out of your pocket.
Yeah, there's another part to it. The other part is stock options. We pay all these CEOs with stock, right? Yeah. This is how they make their money. So if they can run the stock up by not having to worry about pesky regulations,